So my name's Drew Rollert. I'm the CEO and founder of BetrSpot with my partner Dave Michelizzi in the back. Give a good wave. Just want to say hi. So we run BetrSpot, which is a free mobile app that's meant to help people in crowded environments, first come, first serve environments. The idea of why we created BetrSpot is to help people be able to find seating in places where they may be locked out of seating, or in situations where they may have a prime space and would be willing to consider giving up a space to somebody else to essentially benefit from doing that at an earlier time. So we're a marketplace for what we consider to be called micro real estate, which is real estate that you don't own, but because you purchase something, you're allowed to have a right to use, so you can give that up at any time. So effectively, the world's getting more crowded, and we can all see that tonight. There's about 25 people standing up in the back. The planet is going to keep getting more crowded, and what's going to end up happening is these things called third homes, which are the places between our home and our work, are just going to keep getting more and more crowded. That could be a bar that you like going down to. That could be the cafe in the morning. It could be the breakfast joint. It's just going to keep getting more and more crowded. There's nothing we can do about it, and it's not that it's bad. You know, it's a sign of success. But pretty soon, you're not going to be able to plan on what's happening down there. As a matter of fact, right now, if you were to think about tomorrow morning when you went down to the local Starbucks, you're probably not going to be able to guess how many people are going to be taking up seats. You know, will there be a line? I mean, you might be able to make a phone call, but that's pretty much the best info you can get. So we take the premise of the idea that the value, your space, the column of space that you occupy actually has a value everywhere you go. Sometimes it can have no value. If you're in an empty space, your bodily space has no value. When in times where things are busy and it's crowded, let's just say you have a spot at the front of a line or a table at a packed cafe at lunch, that value actually is something that now can be monetized. So we've seen BetrSpot being used so far right now. We've been out for about 4 months. Good examples of where you might be able to use it would be a crowded bar on a big night. Packed cafes. I'm sure everybody here has been to a crowded Starbucks and there's nothing but students sitting there for 4 hours, who probably purchased a single bagel. Concerts, anything first come, first serve. Again, theaters, movie theaters, lines, and in some situations, trains and buses. The idea for BetrSpot started a long time ago, about 10 years ago, but I really didn't actually act on it until about 2 years ago when I've been running a parking marketplace. Nothing similar to Haystack. It was only driveways and garage spots. But I decided, there's more spaces out there that are being traded every day after people get out of their cars than just parking spots. There's cafe tables, there's bar spots, there's line spots, commuter rails, trains, et cetera, et cetera. So we made the exponential jump to any type of space that your body can physically occupy at any time. In this case, we have bars with the top value, cafes, movie theaters, trains, planes, pools, movie theaters, and special events sometimes could be, maybe an outdoor space, a green space, maybe for like a lawn or something like that. So we kick in when a place hits spatial saturation. That's when things become what we call a spot market. A spot market is when there's more people standing, essentially, than there are spaces for them to sit down. Now, whether or not they're comfortable still standing, at some point, they'll get sick of standing. So at that point, we give them the capacity to reach out to other people and say, how much would it be willing for you to give up the space that you have and not attach a time to it? So what we do is we run the micro markets, spot markets we call them, with Stripe, our payment processor, who does Instacart, Lyft, Reddit, the new Apple Pay. We give venues who like to participate a dashboard API for their analytics, who's posting spots, who's requesting spots, how much they're requesting for. And right now, we're pretty much just a C2C service, but we plan on enterprise white labeling them for certain venues that have spatial saturation problems. So right now, everybody's heard the share economy term. I feel that we fit in that. Right now, I could think of us kind of almost as a springboard for an Airbnb. When you buy something, you're given a right to use, and that right to use can be released at any time in certain situations. Now, in some certain situations, you may choose not to release the space to somebody else, and sometimes you will. So we take the same track where we want to encourage sharing, we want to encourage circulation, we want to encourage turnover. And we're finding that people are receptive to all of those. So right now we're on both stores, Apple, Android. Follow us if you don't mind on social media at BetrSpot. And if you tweet us, you can win a chance to win a $50 gift certificate today. So if you could, that'd be awesome. So, any questions?
How do you enforce the right for one person to replace another person in a public line? And I throw out the example, Black Friday, I'm in line at Best Buy. How do I give up my first space in line?
Well, you'd have to download the app so you can see the process of how it happens, but the app actually allows you to quantify where you physically are down to several feet. So say, for example, he could have a corner spot, he could be 3 spots in. So with a line, you can identify where you physically are in the line so that you may be able to post it and then consider being replaced. So
what if the people behind me aren't pleased with someone replacing me?
Absolutely. And you know, one of the first things we tested this was at Fenway for the Red Sox playoff about 10 years ago, which is actually kind of humorous because you would think that all these people waiting in line all night, literally all night, to get in for the standing room only seats would have had an issue with it. So I waited in line for about 12 or 14 hours, and at 5 in the morning I decided to give up my spot, and I just wrote on a cardboard sign, hey, who wants to take this space? Walked it down. Within a couple minutes people came up and said, what do you want for it? And I said, $150, even though standing room only tickets are $18. Now, immediately the first thing I thought was, would my line neighbors have an issue with me stepping out and somebody they didn't know stepping in? They did. As a matter of fact, what I watched for the next half an hour is my line neighbors actually borrow my sign and I'll trade out the spots behind me. So, now that being the case, we still are very sensitive to that, and we enforce the fact that it has, for lines, has to be a par value exchange. So if you're posting 2 spots, only 2 spots can actually be replaced. You can't have more than that. If not, we give people the capacity to essentially complain about your behavior, and then we suspend the account.
So, I mean, I think you mentioned a few things. So I think the willingness to pay for an app like this may be high. It's kind of obvious. Someone wants to pay to get to the front. But the supply of the volume that you would get, I feel, could be very difficult. Especially on things like bars and scenes where you're there to have fun, right? I mean, so the question is that you just waited an hour with a bouncer let you get out, go to the back, sell it to someone else, and be able to monetize that moment.
Well, for us, lines themselves are just a small portion of spot trades. I mean, if anything, we're concentrating more on seats, stools, chairs, tables that are inside a venue rather than purely just lines. Now, as long as you're not disrupting or increasing the line, it stays the same. So therefore, the line itself hasn't changed. Now, I can understand why that's a little disruptive to people, like all of a sudden somebody stepping out that they knew, somebody stepping in that they didn't. But as long as it doesn't grow, we haven't seen any issue with people having problems with it. Now, in bars, in situations where people have a limited amount of time, cafes, where they are willing to stand up like half an hour, 40 minutes before it starts getting old, at that point, we've seen ourselves being a useful tool for people to say, would you consider giving up this type of space? Maybe watching half the game is sufficient for you, and I'd give you $20 if you change your mind and released it.
Shoveled out snow space in the city of Boston. Would allow that?
Well, we don't concentrate on parking spots. It's only private spots that are first come, first served. So you would have to somehow hack our system in order to post a parking spot.
So how do you deal with the scalping police who might step in and say, hey buddy, $150 for a spot? Is that,
Sure.
It's the question of the line.
Of course. Now, people have been scalping stuff forever. I mean, and there's also people who squat, and they've been squatting forever. They don't, have a place to go, they want to, be someplace warm, whatever the reason is. We can't stop illegitimate behavior from hitting a market. As a matter of fact, every single marketplace out there has the same issues. We do have safeguards that prevent that type of behavior, either from the public can complain about them, or the users that are transacting, when they rate each other, they can say, your behavior wasn't correct, maybe you try to put another person in the line, or et cetera, et cetera. So we're trying to build the market so that it stops people both from trying to do those behaviors and really cuts back on them. But for the moment, we haven't seen people abusing the system, and everybody's been, happy to have it as a tool.
Great, thank you.